So what my plan was is to show you the current presentation I'm doing with supporters and donors that just clarifies who we are, what we are. It's a neat little PDF. And I will also then share that with you. So if people go, oh, what's Never Again is Now about, or they want to find out some more, you can give them the very latest pitch deck that I'm talking about. And I think it covers off most of what we're on about. And it also helps people give. Now, I'm not asking you all to go and pitch for money from people, though, of course, if you want to do that, feel free. But it's really just bringing us all up to speed, and it's a resource for you. Does that sound okay? All good? Okay. So this is an overview of us. What we want to do is our mission is making anti-Semitism unthinkable by renewing our commitment to Western civilization. So as a whole country, to say the way to secure the safety and the freedom of the Jewish people in Australia is to renew our deep commitment to the values and the practices of Western civilization. So this is the problem we face. We're in a clash of civilizations. This is not just a Jewish problem. It's not just an Israel problem. This is a clash of civilizations, a war between Western civilization and authoritarianism of the jihadist and the neo-Marxist sort. And we see this in the polarization, anti-Semitism, and declining social cohesion in Australia and the Western world. And the Overton window has shifted, allowing anti-Semitic ideas to become possible public policy options. Particularly since October 7, it's this explosion, this permission has been given to people to think things and say things in public that were previously unthinkable, and that's very dangerous. The Overton window, if you've heard me talk about this before, is the range of policies politically acceptable to the mainstream population. What was unthinkable, before, say, support for jihadist terror organizations, like racism towards Jews, is becoming acceptable to the mainstream population. And once this happens, these views can then be adopted as policy by political parties and in time become public policy. And the Overton window has to be shifted back so that any policy that is anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Western civilization is unthinkable by the mainstream of Australia. And when that happens, no political party will ever try and enact policy around that. It's unelectable. And to have policies that are anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, or anti-Western civilization. So that's the sort of idea. That's what we're trying to do. The solution is to renew our commitment to Western civilization, to execute a well-resourced strategy to shift the Overton window by exposing and countering the destructiveness of the radical left's ideas, expose and counter the destructiveness of jihadist ideology, expose and counter the destructiveness of the authoritarian. I have to say I've had some extraordinarily unhelpful interactions online with the Christian right. Some quite interesting interactions with folk over the last couple of weeks that has surprised me. And the way we do that positively is to capture the hearts and minds of a generation with the beauty and power of the biblical story and worldview and the Judeo-Christian culture and civilization that's emerged from that. So that's our solution. That's the plan. And it's a 20-year plan. It's taken us 70 years, 80 years, 100 years, 1,400 years to get to where we are. What we need to do is work together over the next couple of decades to push back against all of this. And so our vision, if we're successful, is winning the clash of civilizations so that Australia is a beacon of the best of Western civilization, evidenced by the safety, freedom, and prosperity of the Jewish community and our commitment to the state of Israel. That's what success would look like. If in 20 years we're approaching that, I'll be extremely happy. And the strategy is to educate and activate the 60 to 70% of Australians who are the winnable middle, who are subject to an extraordinary barrage of propaganda and misinformation and outright lies from the left and from the Islamists around Israel and Jews. And I've just the last few weeks had a few experiences where I've been really shocked at how successful our opponents have been at shifting that winnable middle. So amongst thoughtful, intelligent, affluent, Anglo-Christian people I've talked to who've engaged with me face-to-face or online, who really have bought the idea that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and that the reason people in Australia hate Jews is because of what the Jews are doing to the Palestinians in Gaza. So we've got a lot of work to do with that winnable middle. And our strategy has been to start with church-going Christians and then generate a broad movement of cultural renewal that includes most Australians. And starting with the church-going Christians, because 1 in 7 Australians still go to church, are in church about once a month. So it still is a distribution network for ideas. And the other reason, apart from just the practicalities of this is a way to get to people, call me naive, but I think everyone who worships a Jew should actually stand with the Jewish people. So for me, it's actually quite simple, and it should be easy to convince Christians to not hate Jews. But of course, 2,000 years of church history shows it's not easy, but it can be done. So, how do we execute this strategy? We want to build a media platform, conservative Judeo Christian direct to social media news and commentary platform that informs people, local chapters, which you're all part of, which is so exciting, Jews and non Jews working together at the grassroots level to combat anti Semitism on the ground. And then we'll run events, large scale events to mobilize Australians and send a message to politicians that anti Semitism is not just a Jewish problem. Civic engagement, get involved in all levels of government as we can, including volunteering. I would say joining political parties that advance the cause of Western civilization. Probably and we won't give direct advice on that, but you could probably work out there are a couple of parties around that are more closely aligned with our values and vision than others. And we're running in partnership with the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, which is a group from the US. We're partnering with them to run a national mayors summit on the Gold Coast. So inviting hopefully about 100 mayors and some of their senior staff for a summit for 2.5 days on the Gold Coast, all expenses paid, bringing them in to develop strategies at a local government level to address anti-Semitism and to work with faith leaders in doing that. That's very exciting. And then obviously we've got to raise the money and we've got to do the education piece. I worked out that I think I've probably spoken in various rallies, conferences, and so on it must be getting close to 30,000 people now over the last 18 months. So just talking, telling the better story, getting the word out. How do we do it? We empower people for the mission, and we want to mobilize folk locally, and that's what we're all here to do. At a national level, the sort of head office, we're going to build the social media out and the sort of the media business, as it were, run the mayoral summits and develop an education program. So the schools program is on hold and is probably what looks like having more engagement and easier to get off the ground is a corporate program, corporate education in businesses. We've run one trial of that. We ran a very successful day for a business in Melbourne. We'll look at developing that, but that's pretty niche and specialized. But then the local chapter level, what we want is local community events where we just engage with local folk who are part of the winnable middle. Again, the whole focus is not just the Jewish community or the Christian Zionists who already they're already on board. We've got to extend our reach. Civic engagement, so getting involved, I can't stress enough the effect you can have in your local branch if you join a party. And then the church and shul. So we've got to reach the churches. We've got to get into those churches in every community around the country to help them realize the Jewishness of Christianity and our obligation as people who follow Jesus to stand with the Jewish people and I believe to stand with Israel. So we've got to do that. And that's all got to happen at a local grassroots level. So so that's where you guys all come in. That's what's so exciting about, I think, what we're seeing around the country is all this energy at the grass. So, what we've achieved, this is a bit of self-promotion because I've been talking to large funders, but we've got 33,000 people on our database. It's about half Christian, half Jewish. We've got 3 local chapters in Sydney, actually probably more. We've got Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, Canberra, the Shoalhaven. With around 800 volunteers involved in some way over the last 18 months. I think I've spoken to around 30,000 people. Maybe it might be a bit optimistic, but it sounds good. I think it's about that. Podcast appearances. I've been on numerous podcasts. The last month seems to have been a month for podcasts. This isn't including all Freya's appearances on Sky. If we added those in, we'd get the numbers up. So Freya obviously is a public face and having a very significant influence. Podcasts. I was on a podcast just a little while ago with Nate Buzz. I was on a very fascinating podcast. It's up on the Never Again Is Now website with a Hong Kong Cantonese YouTuber. That's at over 10,000 views already. So that's quite a hoot. Hong Kong Chinese, very interested in what's happening in Australia. Our social media platforms, thanks Rachel and others, are doing very well, partners with Combat Anti-Semitism. And up until February, pretty much this was all done by volunteers. None of us had drawn a salary. We'd paid a couple of sort of contractors to do bits and pieces. And now we're slowly going, oh, actually the level of the scale and the size we're working at, we've got to raise the sort of the capacity of the whole system. But that's and that's not me, that's just what's happened through all of your efforts and everyone's involvement. It's pretty extraordinary, really, what has happened. So when I speak to donors, I say, what will your support enable us to do? And the two major focuses for this year and the next little strategic growth is to build an independent media organization that will build a talent pipeline of media influencers and get our message onto the devices and into the minds of the winnable middle of all ages. So someone asked me, I met with a donor this morning and they said, oh, what about Erin Molan? And that's great. Erin is fantastic. But I said, Erin Molan is the talent. She's not building a talent pool. What we have to do is find in Australia, Australian voices of all ages who can actually give the majority of their lives to creating content that advances Western civilization, supports the Jewish people, and supports Israel. They need to be identified, they need to be trained, and then we need a platform that enables them to earn a living by doing that, because that is exactly what our opponents are doing. The media war against us is extraordinary. The information war we're in is absolutely extraordinary. So this is our humble little effort to address that. And then the next big focus is to hire staff to lead and resource our chapters so that every major population center has a group of activists working to educate and mobilize people to renew our culture, to eradicate anti-Semitism, and to stand with Israel. We have some amazing people who are now part of our team at a chapter lead level. You've all met Rachel, who's, I'm sure, on WhatsApp. So Rachel has joined us on staff to corral and harness all the WhatsApps. The other people I'd like to introduce to you all, I'm sharing, I can't see all your faces. Mel from Perth has just joined us to lead our work in WA. That's super exciting. And Jennifer up in Queensland has joined us to lead our work in the sunny state of Queensland. And the goal always is not to just build a big infrastructure, but to take people on where we can just empower and grow this movement so that every one of us can find a place and find a role in the movement. I was at Shabbat dinner, Margot and I and Freya and Cooper at Shabbat dinner on Friday night, and one of the kids, well, he's in his 20s, the family who were hosting us, were talking about all of this, and he said, but I'm not, he said, looking at Freya and Cooper, he said, but I'm not as articulate as you guys, and I can't come up with these quick answers and so on. And I just said to him, we all have a role to play. That's the beauty of this movement and of social change movements, is everybody has a role to play. Freya and I are good talking heads, but talking heads by themselves are no use. You need every part of the movement playing that piece. And the truth of the matter is, we will win this war one mind at a time. We want to change one mind at a time. That's how it works. So it's one conversation, one mind, one relationship, and that takes all of us working together. But these are the two, when I'm talking to people about raising money and where our finances are going to go, we need money to do those two things and to scale it up. And when our population centers, it's not just where the Jewish community is. I long to see every population center, every regional town of any size and sometimes of no size, having activists working in the local churches and local communities to support our mission, because there are voters in every part of the country, and we have to shift the culture so that the voting shifts. Then this is a bit of self-promotion and I feel awkward, so I'll skip over it. But just so you know, when I travel around the country and I talk to people, no one else is doing what we're doing. I keep thinking, why are we doing this? Surely this isn't that special. But actually, you know what? There's no one else in bringing Christians and Jews and everyday Australians together in this combination of grassroots work and media, with the particular theory of change uniting us around combating anti-Semitism through renewing Western civilization. So cultural change and renewal is the only long-term solution to anti-Semitism, and this has to be led by Christians and Jews working together. So some of you might have seen Melanie Phillips when she was out here. She's this fabulous English author, writer, and I haven't read her book yet. She just got a book out where basically her whole thesis is Western civilization can only be saved by Christians and Jews working together. So I thought, gosh, she's been reading my stuff. Probably not. I think it's a fairly obvious solution, but I think it's very exciting, encouraging to see her come up with that. Founder-led organizations outperform manager-led organizations, blah, blah, blah. Then there's a bit of a pitch about me and Freya. Pia said, where else in the world is this happening? Nowhere. I get asked, I've had people from South Africa, from Canada, and from the United States and the UK reach out to me to say, can we learn from you? Can we think about this in our country? And the answer is yes, but not yet. And Canaan engage Baha'is, Hindus, Iranians. Yeah, man, we are a broad community. So we want everyone. We're very broad, but we've got the singular focus. So at all our events, the big rallies, we've had Iranians, mostly those who are working for regime change and who hate the IRGC. We've got a demonstrated ability to get things done. We're a well-governed charity. Will you invest now to build a movement that will impact our country over the next 20 years? And then there's some funding needs, which are optimistic. We're looking to raise about $3 million a year. That's a lot of money, but it's also not a lot of money, but it's a lot of money. And we may or may not get anywhere near there. We'll just see. And we're inviting people to become partners. This is for major donors, and then how to invest. So that's the shtick. I just want to thank you so much. It's the honor and joy of my life to do this work with you all, and I'm just delighted. And finally, if you want to come to Israel with me in November, we're going to do a trip to Israel, to a bit of a mission to Israel to bring Jews and Christians together, travel the land, go down south, meet political and military leaders, and do some sightseeing and have a wonderful time.